Imagine working your whole life to create a safe, peaceful home for your family, only to find strangers slipping into your backyard as if they owned it. That's exactly what happened to me. I thought I was just dealing with nosy neighbors, but I soon realized this wasn't about a pool. It was about power, control, and prejudice. My so-called HOA neighbors thought they could treat my property like a community playground, ignoring my boundaries while making sure I knew I didn't belong. But what they didn't expect was that their little game would come back to drown them in consequences they never saw coming. I moved into my home with a sense of pride. It was the first house I had ever owned, and I worked years to finally give my family the backyard oasis we dreamed of. The crown jewel was the pool, small but sparkling, tucked behind a tall wooden fence. For me, it wasn't just a pool. It was a symbol of achievement, a place for my kids to laugh freely, and a safe escape from the stress of daily life. At first, life in the neighborhood seemed quiet enough. The HOA sent its welcome packet filled with rules, but nothing seemed unusual. Until one afternoon, I noticed towels tossed over my fence. When I stepped outside, I found two teenage girls lounging by the pool as if it belonged to them. They smirked when I asked where they lived, pointing vaguely toward a nearby cul-de-sac before slipping away. I thought it was an innocent mistake until it kept happening. More and more people, adults this time, showed up in my yard, using the pool without permission. They weren't shy about it either. Coolers, lawn chairs, laughter that carried into the night, and almost every single one of them was connected to Karen, the HOA president. At first, I wondered if it was just entitlement, but the snide remarks they left behind, trash in my yard, mocking notes taped to my fence about keeping the community spirit alive, revealed something else. They wanted to remind me that this wasn't just their neighborhood. In their eyes, it wasn't meant for someone like me. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Each weekend, more uninvited guests appeared, each acting like my home was theirs. When I confronted them, I was met with thinly veiled insults, comments about people like you being too uptight. Karen herself once waved from my deck, drink in hand, as if daring me to stop her. It wasn't just disrespect, it was calculated. They didn't just sneak in. They made sure I saw them. My family began to feel unsafe in our own home. My children stopped swimming altogether, too embarrassed by the constant intrusion. My wife worried what else they might do if we pushed back harder. Every attempt to involve the HOA was met with stonewalling. Karen claimed the pool was technically a shared resource because of a supposed old covenant buried in the community documents. But when I requested to see proof, nothing materialized. Instead, I was threatened with fines for failing to maintain community spirit. It was clear. This wasn't about rules. This was about control. And underneath it all, the whispers and glares told the real story. It was about race. I was one of the only non-white families in the subdivision, and Karen wanted me to feel like an outsider. Her friends reinforced it every time they treated my property like a clubhouse. I started documenting everything. Photos, videos, timestamps. I even installed motion-activated cameras that caught them hopping my fence, dragging coolers behind them. The more evidence I collected, the clearer their arrogance became. They believed they were untouchable, shielded by their HOA titles and their majority. But arrogance always blinds people to consequences, and I was done playing by their rules. The breaking point came on a sweltering Saturday afternoon. I returned home to find nearly a dozen people in my yard, blasting music and splashing in my pool. Karen stood at the center of it all, barking orders like a general commanding her troops. When I confronted them, they laughed, tossing comments about sharing and lightening up. But what they didn't realize was that I had already gone to the county authorities. The truth about the HOA's so-called covenant? It didn't exist. My property was entirely private, and the constant trespassing wasn't just rude, it was illegal. With cameras rolling, I called the sheriff right in front of them. Watching their smirks falter was the first taste of justice I'd had in months. Deputies arrived within minutes, and the party atmosphere turned to stunned silence. Karen tried to spin it, claiming it was a community gathering, but the evidence spoke louder. Trespassing charges were filed, and several of her closest allies received citations on the spot. The HOA board, once so smug, scrambled to distance themselves from Karen. She was stripped of her presidency within weeks, but the damage to her reputation had already been done. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood, and suddenly, the same people who once mocked me couldn't meet my eyes. It wasn't just about winning. It was about proving that no one is above accountability. After that day, peace returned to my home. My children could finally swim without fear of strangers barging in. My wife could sit outside without hearing laughter from uninvited guests. The pool, once a battleground, became ours again. Karen and her friends, they paid dearly. Between fines, legal fees, and the humiliation of being exposed, their little reign of entitlement crumbled. Some even moved away, unable to live down the shame of being caught on camera invading someone else's property. But for me, the victory was bittersweet, because the truth lingered. None of this would have happened if not for the deeper prejudice running through that community. It wasn't just about a pool. It was about people who thought they could dictate who belonged and who didn't, based on the color of my skin. Yet in the end, their attempt to make me feel powerless only backfired. They became the example of what happens when arrogance meets accountability. And as I sit by my pool today, I can't help but wonder, how many more families face the same silent battles, hidden behind fences and HOA letters? How many stories never make it to the light? Sometimes, the price of prejudice is paid in ways the guilty never expect.